Pat, what's the overwhelming voice just broke? What's the overwhelming emotion after that one?
I think, it's a bit of a strange one. I think, as a group, proud that we've retained the Ashes. But it's, off the back of not our greatest week. It feels like, good that we've won the Ashes, retained the Ashes, but we know we've got a fair bit of work to do for next week, a few improvements to make, and that's it.
In one respect, I mean, heading into this series, you were so big on it's about winning rather than retaining, having, I suppose, ticked that box 4 years ago. In one respect, does it feel like you haven't actually achieved anything yet at that level?
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's a pretty similar group to 2019 when we retained it, and we all came away feeling okay, but it felt like there was a little bit, we just kind of just missed what we'd come over to achieve. So, in some regards, whatever happened today wouldn't really change how we look at next week. We want to win it, so we make sure that we win it outright.
Pat, can you put your finger on what made it a tough week this week? You'd had the break leading in. You talked as though everyone was very fresh and sort of feeling good for this game. Can you put your finger on why things didn't click?
I think across the board, in all facets, we just weren't at our best. It happens. I think the good thing is you look at kind of the body of work of this team, and it's quite rare that we have a off week kind of across the board. So, I don't think you can put your finger on just one thing. I also think they played really well this week, which probably highlights a few of those areas even more.
Pat, you've been on the road in the last 18 months as captain. Just the 2 days 2 and 3, did they feel like the toughest you had as captain and as a result as a bowler as well?
I don't know, hard to kind of rank them all. I think, as a bowler, probably frustrating, and that's, didn't bowl very well at all. Kind of up to my standards I try and keep myself to. So I think in some ways that's frustrating. In terms of captaincy, I think there's been a few of those moments where, the batters play well, have a good partnership. The game moves very quickly. We probably knew coming to this series they were going to have a couple of days where, everything went kind of their way and the game moves really quickly. So it was one of those days. So, tough, frustrating, but that's cricket. We've been on the other side of it plenty of times.
But just the way England play, did you come into the series prepared that, look, when it comes off, we'll try our best, but not much we can do, and you just think about it that way, or look at what you could have done differently, and how you maybe couldn't control their tempo?
Oh, you definitely try and look at what you can do differently for next time. That'll be part of this week for sure. And I think there's some, obvious things that we could do a little bit differently, maybe with some plans, but even just the way we kind of executed our bowling. But knowing that, some days, batters are going to have days out. There's going to be times where, even say that, the conditions, there wasn't a heap of swing or seam there. That happens. And we just got to make sure when we get those kind of conditions in our favour, we really capitalise on it as well.
Did you feel, Pat, on day 2 that the game got away from you as a team and as a leader and your captaincy and whatnot? Because there were drop catches, there were balls that just felt they weren't sighted. Obviously England scoring very fast. Did it actually feel like the game got away from you and you were sort of out of place, if you know what I mean?
I certainly felt like they were in control for some stages, and I wouldn't say that's overly uncommon. Whoever the opponent is, it's about trying to make those moments as short as possible, or try and wrestle back some kind of control. So I think that kind of 2-hour block in the middle session wasn't our best, and we tried to throw a few different plans at them, and maybe on another day they work. A couple of the edges carry through, or some of the catches go to hand. But I thought they batted well, and pretty proud of the end of that day trying to wrestle. We were able to wrestle back some of the control.
If I could just go one more. Obviously, I think you spoke a few weeks ago in 2019, there was big celebrations after Manchester retaining the series. You sort of thought, don't know how I feel about celebrating something that's not won yet. Will there be celebrations as well tonight, or is it almost just like any other drawn match in your eyes as far as aftermath goes?
I don't think there'll be huge celebrations. I think there'll be, maybe a bit of a pat on your back, for retaining the series. There's been a lot of work that's gone into putting us in the position where a draw does make us retain the Ashes. So, but there's a test match starting in 3 days, so that's going to be the full focus.
Just sort of following on from what Bharat said, Pat, you sort of said that maybe tactically or with plans that there might have been things that you could have done differently in this test. What sort of things do you think you might have been able to do differently that you take forward from here?
We'll have a look and, I'll probably work through them kind of myself and with the coaches. But, I think dropped him a bit like day two. But I think, the question marks are always, when do you try and increase the tempo? When do you try and kind of rein it in? When do you really look to create something out of nothing? Or when do you just feel like you can hold on, hoping that a wicket might come through that way? So, it's nothing really specific there, but we'll work through that and come up with some plans.
And just that last wicket partnership between Johnny and Jimmy, was at a stage there where it felt most frustrating, and do you think you could have done something differently at that point in time? I mean, it's moot now because it's a draw, but I guess in just the way you look on how a game sort of gets hold of you rather than you getting hold of it.
Yeah, that's for sure one of the areas we'll look at as well. It's, again, I think Johnny batted well. We've gone down a similar tactic. I think, England have struggled at times as well with the tail. It's been that kind of series. So, that's certainly one of the areas we'll look at, maybe changing something for next game.
Pat, obviously 2-0 after 2 tests, historically, I think there's only ever been one team lose an Ashes series from there. But obviously those first 2 tests Mark Wood didn't play. And these last 2 he has, and has had a huge impact. How have you seen his impact on these 2 matches, and I suppose what more or differently you can do to deal with him? Because, it seems, expectation rises every time he gets the ball.
Yeah, he's bowled really well. I actually thought in Australia, last Ashes series, he bowled fantastically as well. I think he played 3 or 4 of the test matches and had impact in them. So, we've got to come up with some options, some plans. Again, I think he's been able to find impact pretty early on in his spells. Again, it's about trying to put overs into the bowlers and just trying to come up with different methods. So, I thought, again, Marnus played him really well yesterday. So, something for all of us to go back and look at and come up with some methods.
And just on the batting side of things, batting partnerships, obviously the way that England play, are you disappointed at all that they've been able to put partnerships on with basically as much, if not more, regularity than you have in the last little period, where you've got a top 6 who generally are pretty good at cashing in, I suppose? Yeah,
again, I think we probably left a few runs out there in the first innings. That was a really good wicket to bat on day one. But again, historically we have been really good in that area. So it's not something I'm super worried about. But again, I think it's a good time to know, or to look back at all our games and have a real think about what we could do differently and put that into action for next week.
One down here, I'll finish off with Louis up the back.
Pat, 2013, 10 years ago, England retained the Ashes after a lot of rain on the last day at Old Trafford, funnily enough. Now the boot's on the other foot. Do you have a lot of sympathy with England in that regard?
Honestly, I wasn't here, so I can't remember any of that. Sorry, I've got nothing.
Pat, just on your own performance as a bowler in this test, you said before that you didn't feel like you bowled particularly well. Were there times that you felt the captaincy overwhelmed you and made your first job as a bowler more difficult?
I don't think so. Execution. I think I let through more boundaries than I normally do. Probably just 1 or 2 bad balls and over, which yeah, don't know really. Rhythm felt pretty good. Felt like I was pretty clear in my own minds and plans, so don't know.